So again, welcome to the 2021 GADMAC Global Animal Disaster Management Conference. We've got Rebecca's session on the realities of fires in barns and veterinary facilities. And again, you can go to our website under speakers and read all about Rebecca's history, which is rather impressive, if I may say. Before we start, some basic housekeeping. The the chat function has been disabled for participants. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A box and we'll work through those questions towards the end of the presentation. As you leave today's session, you'll be invited to participate in a short online survey, and we encourage you to do so. Just a reminder that today's presentation, as with all the GADMAC presentations, will be recorded, but they will not be available until July, when they will be edited and released as part of our GADMAC Awards ceremony. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our new honorary member of the conference committee, Dr. Rebecca Husted. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. We were afraid that this would eventually happen, so we got a backup plan because we do disaster preparedness. I'm going to do speed dating about barn fires and veterinary facilities, and I hope you guys are on with me. So first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about best practices. No animal is worth a human life. We all have been talking about that during this conference. Call the fire department first. It's amazing how many times I've heard people go to foreign countries and they didn't know that 911 is not the number there. Anyway, call the fire department and call a veterinarian next. Often the veterinarian may be on the other side of the county, might need some time to get there. Get the right people on the way and get the others out of the way. I think we have talked about that in the past. You got to make some hard decisions when you're talking about animals that are coming out of fire situations. Usually that's a euthanasia decision. That's what the veterinarian's there for. But it's better to make those hard decisions early instead of later, as other conference presenters have said. Prevention and mitigation is far better than having a response plan. Time and time again, I walk into people's barns and I tell them it's not about response, it's about prevention and mitigation. Treat the medical situation for the patient, perform an extrication to the plan, and always be ready to change your plan, particularly when you're talking about exigent circumstances such as this. And remember, most of my stuff is large animals, but we will talk about small animals a little bit too. So why is it to my technicians and my veterinarians as well, your clients, your families, or friends, we don't want this to happen. That is a brand new barn with a bunch of Frisians in it, and it burned to the ground. And why? Because of an electrical problem. So then you're standing there trying to make people feel better about themselves and explain to them why they've lost all these animals. And we don't want you to be in that situation. So when you go into your clients' facilities, we want you to start looking around and knowing more than they do. So that's what I'm here for today. A lot of you know that I spent 28 years in the military, and I often use this quote, preparing for battle. I've often found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable, and it really comes down to that. And Dr. Dick Mansman had this great quote. It basically said, you know, when he started using a disaster mentality, he started noticing that all of a sudden he had a lot more efficient, workable schedule, and his people worked better together. That just comes with having a disaster mentality. So let's first of all talk about fire as far as what does the fire service respond to. This is National Fire Protection Association. It is heavily leans towards the United States and at least North America. This is particularly from the USA, but the point being that large animal rescues for barn fires, those kind of things, sort of go into the other column, which is very frustrating to us. It's hard to get a lot of data as far as how many barn fires happen. They get lumped in with hay barn fires and all those kind of things. But thank goodness for social media and the regular media and Google so that I can find all this stuff. Poultry facility barns, swine barns burn, horse barns burn, and the numbers are just horrific. Thousands of chickens. This is Zoetis's brand new research facility, and it burned to the ground where they were making vaccines. Pet store fires. This one on the right-hand side just happened 2 days ago. Over 100 animals died of smoke inhalation in that fire. And of course, there's all kinds of complications because of what's going on as far as the weather in the United States right now. But very frustrating. It happens everywhere. Vet clinics, pet sitters, animals are being impacted by these situations everywhere you look around the world. This is a humane society down in Jacksonville, and they lost a bunch of animals. They were able to open an awesome new facility a few years later, but still, that's just something that we don't want to have happen. Animal rescues, it happens to them as well, and what a shame to have happen. In this case, a firefighter was killed trying to help with a 4-alarm fire. We don't want anybody to get injured and get a rope burn, much less get killed trying to help with a situation like this. So it's on us to try to prevent some of those things. So what we're really here for is take a look at the human factors and some of the evidence-based information, looking at some of the animal behavior. In this presentation, it's generally going to be horse behavior. Sorry about that to the other folks that do pets and things, but there is some expertise out there for those. Welfare for both people and animals, and we'll talk a little bit about that and look some the risk evaluations and best practices that we have pulled together over the years. So really it comes down to, why are we looking at everybody else? Look at yourself. What does your community do? Do you have a plan? These are pictures from one fire, Creek Fire in 2017. But every single wildfire we have anywhere in the world, I can pull pictures of people leading horses down the street, trying to load them in trailers like this one in the middle of the road with fire trucks moving around, loose horses running down the street, people trying to help. And I just go, why? What was the plan? And of course, I'm sort of apparently a judgmental person. I was accused of that actually yesterday on Facebook. But I say, why didn't you have a plan? We need to have a better plan. And part of that comes down to us as disaster planners to get the information out to people so that they can have a better disaster plan for themselves. And not just a plan, but I'm a big fan of a good plan. And I'm not mad at these people. They're doing the best thing they can. But I'm betting they've never led their horse down a road before. Those look like pinky finger type warm blood horses, people with the best intentions. But those horses, when they see a fire truck or they see a vehicle, what are they going to do? And then we're going to have a complication with a loose horse running down the road and possibly getting hit or hurting a person too. So Dr. McConico said it the best. A couple years ago, we were at an ACEP conference, and she said, really, everybody should have a comprehensive large animal plan. It needs to plug into all those local plans with the state plans, the regional plans, the national plans. We need to use ICS. We need to use IMS so that those kinds of things can happen. That's really not my expertise, but she's the one that said it, and I've been working with her for years, so it's obviously a good goal for all of us. So again, is it a good plan? When you are under duress and there is fires coming, and there is actually 17 people in that picture trying to load one horse. And I'll just tell you that any horse person will tell you that 17 people aren't needed to load a horse. So, obviously it's emotional. There's a lot of bad situations that happen, but we got to get better at some planning in our communities to prevent these kind of things. Last minute loading of a horse under this kind of conditions. And this is, part of it. That's not a plan either. I don't care if this is a hurricane and this happens to be a wildfire, but having a real evacuation plan, understanding how these things actually happen is really important. It's not about the flames. It's about the smoke. You can't breathe it. They can't breathe it either. This horse obviously has been just let go. Open the gate and let him go. And we see this in so many of these disasters. Where is that horse going to go? He's never been out of a barn or a paddock situation his whole life. What's he going to do? Going down the road, catch a ride? It's not going to happen. So we've got to get that across to people. And it really comes down to being realistic. And I will tell you, I am not the world's most politically correct person. So I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I'm just going to tell you, you got to have a better plan. It's got to be based on reality. And that's what these speakers in this conference is all about. So for example, this is just one example of some details for an example wildfire plan. This person obviously did not have a plan. They didn't even have a chance to hitch the trailer before the fire came. And that's awful. But everybody should have at least some of these things. When you go to Australia, Julie Feeler, who may be on the conference, I'm not sure. She's been on a lot of them. But when I went to her place, I was like, this is interesting. She's in the middle of the woods, and she backs her car in, and all her stuff was on it. And I said, Julie, what are we doing? She said, well, we're in a catastrophic fire season, so you got to be able to leave in less than 3 minutes. And I was like, woo, that's somebody that's actually taking it seriously. So when we start thinking about taking that seriously, who can load, hitch their trailer and load their vehicles in 3 minutes or less? You can't. So you've got to have a plan, and you got to have a plan that's relevant to where you live. So this is a good plan. This just happens to be one picture that I pulled, and I loved it. They actually used FireWise planning. They'd done a pre-fire season burn, and they saved their facility. You know, I know there's a lot of politics that goes into doing pre-fire season burns, but, you know, it obviously works. So having a better plan. One of the worst situations that has occurred in the last few years was the racetrack fire at San Luis Rey. And that was a wildfire associated with a barn fire that it caused. 450 racehorses there, 48 of them died, several people were severely injured, and that was awful that happened in that situation. They didn't have an evacuation plan, and it really came down to it failed. Here's another one, the creek fire again. You know, these horses didn't make it out. Animal control and several willing people showed up to try to help with these horses. Every single one of these gates was locked because of the security concerns. They were not able to get those horses out. Can you imagine the effect on people that tried to show up and had to leave and watch those horses die? That is horrific. It's a failure of the evacuation plan. So how do we balance our security needs with fire and life safety for horses and people and all those kinds of things? And it really comes down to, if you don't have a detection, alert, response, and suppression system as a system, you're going to lose your facility. I'll bet you a lobster on it. I've been betting people for 15 years about a lobster and steak dinner. You show me one fire where a horse died, and I will show you that you probably lost the facility. And I haven't lost the bet, and it's a stacked bet, because as a firefighter, I know that there is so much fuel in that barn. If it gets that hot that you lose one animal, you're going to lose them all, or at least you're going to lose your facility. And that's horrific, but that's the truth, and that's what we need to tell people. Because what we tell them right now is these old wives' tales and lies and myths that are based on, who knows, horse people telling horse people, but they're not asking a veterinarian, they're not asking a structural engineer, they're not asking a firefighter about real things with fire. And so that's where we get ourselves in trouble. For example, you guys, a lot of people here know how I feel about putting horses inside a stall 18 to 24 hours a day. I think that is that's a welfare issue hugely, but we put them in there, I guess, because we're naked and we think that that's a safer place for them. It's not a safer place for them for lots of reasons. Ask your veterinarian, they'll tell you. But when you put a cheap $10 box fan on an extension cord, and then you've got your nice stuff that's painted on the boards that's basically increases the rate at which the fire moves over the board, that's not a great place for a horse. And they can't do anything about it. So we got to come up with a better escape plan, and we got to come up with a better coordination. Because fire don't care. I'm in Macon, Georgia, and that's Macon, Georgia. Fire don't care. When it gets there, it doesn't care that you're a horse. It doesn't care that you're a person. It doesn't care what the effect on you is going to be. And if you start asking average response times of people with their local situations, if you ask your local fire chief, what's my response time? They will probably tell you a lot longer than you expect it is to be, unless you live in an urban area, which is not where we find our barns and most of our horse facilities. So that's the distressing part. When you start asking and parsing apart, what is response time? What does it mean? Does that mean when the fire truck pulls up, or does that mean when everybody's got their gear on? Does that mean that they've got water in the hose? And you start realizing it takes time, and it's all about their safety as well. We don't want a firefighter to get hurt either. So let's take a look real quick at one example in Illinois that I have all the details on. This happened a couple of years ago. They had a lightning strike. The young lady that was involved in this was a firefighter and also a vet tech. And as soon as she realized there was lightning, she ran to the barn. They were able to get the horses out of the barn when they realized that there was a fire. And the time to a non-survivable atmosphere was less than 18 minutes. Now, this is in an old barn. This is a 100-year-old century barn with huge, big beams, and it imploded within 32 minutes. So what that tells you is modern construction, where we know that gusset plates and some of the cheaper methods that we use for building barns these days you've basically got 5 to 7 to 12 minutes, depending on how you've built it up. This is one example of her pulling a horse out at 8:32 p.m. Was when the lightning struck. The horses were out at 8:34 p.m. because she lives right across the street. This is the fire coming through the barn just a few minutes later, and then 15 minutes later, the entire barn was imploded. You don't have enough time. As she said, there was already so much smoke. When she got there, there was already so smoke that she was coughing, trying to get those horses out. And there's the barn falling in at 9:02. Now that's terrifying. When you start looking at, I've got a huge facility, how am I going to get all these animals out in that amount of time? She was very successful. She had a plan, but she's a firefighter. And I'm going to tell you from the perspective of mental health, which has been brought out in lots of speakers in this conference, it really comes down to when I talk to people and I start asking questions and these kind of things, when they find out that there are better solutions, that there is a plan that they could have had, that possibly detectors or sprinklers, depending on how much money you have, they tell me, I don't care how much it costs. If I had known that I could protect my animals or prevent a person from getting hurt, it would not be too much. So we've got to change our perspective in the horse industry on how much money we're willing to spend to prevent fire. And this picture it always chokes me up. Not a single horse died in this fire. But this lady, her name is Liz, she got a text and said, we're trying to get the horses out. The barn is on fire. Can you imagine what it's like to get in your vehicle, trying to drive to where your horse is, not knowing what's going on? This is a set of survivor photos that they took the next day after the fire with all the owners and their horses. And it's absolutely beautiful, but it reminds me always that it's the mental health of people. There's always a person attached to that animal. I don't care what kind of animal it is. Somebody somewhere is attached to that animal. And we do have to pay attention to that. So a real quick game of do you see what I see? When I walk into barns, these are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. And I'm going to buzz through this real quick. So what I'm looking for is, okay, this barn's on the ground. Why is it on the ground? Oh, you go to social media. That's the barn. And no firefighter in their sane mind is going to go into that barn. There's nothing but obstacles. You've got to imagine that it's in the dark. You've got no lights. You've got smoke. Horses are terrified. And oh, by the way, that barn door at the other end is not a barn door. It's not to code. That is not a door. It is not an exit. There's only one way out of that barn. When you realize that there was a whole bunch of people standing around, but 18 horses died in that fire, that's why. There was no exits. So again, not to code. So why are we allowing that? Even in beautiful facilities. I've gone to this facility after the fire. I worked with the insurance company on this fire. They had a beautiful facility, very well set up. They've got everything set up the way you're supposed to do it. They had actually had a walkthrough by the insurance company less than a month before. But some things that I start looking for. Is that a living space up there? Turns out it's not. It's fake, but it looks like it. And as a firefighter, that's the first place I would be going to make sure that there's no people up there, which wastes time trying to get your horses out. The red circle kinds of things are things that I worry about. The good things are in green. So lots of egress there, but you know, what are the other problems? How much, where's the living space? Where's the closest hydrant? Those are the kinds of questions that firefighters ask. Again, do you see what I see? I look for things like smoke alarms. Do we have a flame detection system? Is it hardwired to the fire department so that you don't have to make a phone call to the 911? Do they have fire extinguishers? Where are the fire extinguishers? When I find those little cheapo 5-pound fire extinguishers, I'll just tell you, they got about 9 seconds of stuff in it. So that means that when you go fiddle around, pull the pin, everything else, and you go to fire, at the base of the fire, you get 9 seconds. And the average fire extinguisher will not put out one hay bale that's burning. So you got to have a lot more than 2 in your whole barn. Let's take a look at some other things. On the outside, we've got xeric landscaping. That looks really good. Immaculate cleaning and around the building you can get around. Sadly, every single horse has a window, but there's no access to the outside wall. That is the most important thing for horse barns, is to have egress to the outside wall, which means an extra door, which means It's a pain in the butt, and snow gets behind it, and mud gets behind it, and it costs extra, and all those things. But if you're going to try to get a horse out of a burning barn, that is the only safe way to do it. And people don't do it. So what happened here? Basically, it was 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So very, very cold. They lost 43 horses. It was caused by a problem with a dryer that had been left on that was a malfunction. And it's just one of those funky things. They did not save a single horse. By the time the lady that owns it got there and realized that there was a fire, she went to go grab the handle of the door and had to let go because it was so hot. She burned her hand. Nothing to save at that point. This is what it looks like. So this is why we don't want anybody running down an interior aisle of any barn. Now this happens to be a huge barn, but little barns do the exact same thing. And I think you guys have been seeing some of the collapse of snow load barns the last few days with all the terror here in the United States with the weather. And it does the exact same thing. That's why it's such a dangerous place to be. That roof truss fails very early on based on the heat, and it's very difficult to deal with. So the fire trucks were able to get there. They put a lot of what we call TV water on the situation and eventually stopped the burning of the fire. But by that time, it had actually consumed most of the fuel. So we got to have a pre-plan. What does that mean? In reality, what does that mean? It means that if you're going to move a horse out of a barn and move it to a paddock, I did some guesstimates. Let's just say that it takes you about 20 seconds to catch a horse. And then you run down the barn aisle, it takes you about 20 seconds. And when I was in good shape, maybe so, these days, that ain't gonna happen. You get out to the paddock, you put him in the paddock, what do you gotta do? You gotta close the gate behind him, and his buddies are gonna try to be getting past you, so it takes another 20 seconds, and you gotta run back to the next horse's stall. If you do some simple math for one person, that comes out to 36 minutes to move the 18 horses that were in those barn stalls. So if you do a little division, okay, let's say we've got 4 people. That means 9 minutes. But it was, as you're going to see in a moment, it was an unsurvivable space within less than 9 minutes. So just happened to be that the chief, I called him up and talked to them. There was 5 people at the barn when the fire started. They called 911 immediately. They happened to be at the fire department. After 7 minutes, that's when they pulled up. That picture on the left at the top is the picture that the chief took when he pulled up to the fire. There is nothing, there's no survivable space inside that barn at this point anyway. It's just smoke that's fuel getting ready to turn on. And 3 minutes later is that picture on the right. There was nothing to save at that point. Not a single horse was rescued out of this situation. So that's the honesty of fire. So let's take a look. Here we are as rescuers at a conference. What do we do when we get them out? Several people have mentioned it's not about the external injuries, it's about the internal injuries. This is the one horse that they got out of this barn. They put her on oxygen immediately. They still did not save this horse. You can tell that she's had some serious issues. Dr. Chris Bell, he's up in Manitoba, Canada. He did a great job with this one. This was a hot box for a tractor that caught on fire and caught all the plastic and stuff, and then it caught some local things on fire. They managed to stop the fire, but it was just the smoke. They treated 16 horses for smoke inhalation, and several of them had to go to the clinic for ICU care. And that's just from a little small fire, but it's in enclosed space. They can't get away from it. For many of us, we also worry about lawyers, and you may have to get a lawyer involved. CSU had a horrific fire a few years ago. They had a client that sued them in the amount of $1 million for the loss of her frozen semen from a stallion, and it went all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court. So as a business, if you run a business, if you're a veterinarian, if you're running a rescue, if you're any of those kinds of things, and you've got to think about the legal important part of it, you also need to talk to your lawyers to straighten that out. So I'm just going to put this up here. You guys can screenshot it real quick. This is NFPA 150. This is the code for anything to do with animal housing and veterinary facilities. There's a lot of government gobbledygook in there, I'll just be honest, but it is the guidance to fire investigators about how to do best practices for these kinds of situations for any kind of animal, zoos, circuses, any of those kind of things. And they will tell you that animals need to be able to be removed in less than 5 minutes. And the average animal barn, based on their data, is fully involved in less than 15 minutes. So what can you do? when you guys are walking around and you're looking at people's barns or whatever kind of facilities, I want you to start understanding what true prevention looks like. Okay, this is what true prevention looks like. Everything's in conduit, and you've done an electrical inspection, and you've had it updated by an electrical code inspector. And yes, it's going to cost you some money, but the common electrical inspection that I see is people buy a property with a barn already on it, and they go over and they flick the light and they go, oh, it works. That's not an electrical inspection. So get somebody to come out there and do it. And it's going to cost you some money to update it. But I promise you, it's a lot cheaper than doing what I have to do, which is talk to people after these situations. Eliminate those accidental ignition sources. I find these in almost every barn I go into. Extension cords, cheap $10 box fans, crap for electrical. And I'm not an electrician. I don't need to be. I can look at that and tell you that that's just not right. If you do it right, it looks a lot different. These are the correct fans. These are updated electrical. A lot more ventilation that's been put into this. Stall doors to the outside as well as the inside. Large fire extinguishers, marked exits. All these things start looking like, hey, that's not a barn, is it? Oh, yes, that's a barn. But it's done right. And it looks a lot different than a lot of the things that we see around the world, and even in developed countries, because we've allowed people to tell us how horse people do things. Separating your combustibles from animal facility, where the animals are, that's just common sense, you would think. Accessibility all around it, where you put your valuable animals, where you can get them out the easiest. Coming up with, this is a good one. This is not expensive. Stall door to the outside, stall door to the inside, and good ventilation. Your veterinarian will love you because you aren't going to be ending up with an animal with RAO and equine asthma and all those kind of things. Stalls with a little paddock outside. That's a little bit more expensive, but hey, that's nice too. You chase the horse out, shut the door, and then you got time to catch him and do something else with him. At least he's not in the facility, and you can deal with the fire separately from the animals. I know for many of the small animals, this is not an option. And I know that zoo animals and those kind of things have to have other options, but it is doable if we think about it. We're human beings. If we think about it hard enough, we can figure it out. I know this looks like a hotel. This is not a hotel. This is a beautiful barn in Virginia that I worked with. They did a total refit. This is Mrs. Marr's barn. And when I went to go inspect and look at it, they'd spent $500,000. And I was like, $500,000. They were like, yeah, well, it's 4 barns, and we totally updated her house too, and we totally updated everything. It was due for that anyway, and it dropped the insurance premium so much it'll pay for itself in like 7 years. And it's a business expense to them. So they were willing to do it. And they did it right. They did everything. They put in firewalls. They totally redid the electrical. They did training. They bought the big fire extinguishers that are on racks that you can roll. They put a hay facility outside the horse barns. They put in the conduit. They've got everything, sprinkler systems, everything. Now, I know that most people can't do that, but some of the simplest things that we can do is to actually do the electrical. This happens to be New York Police Department. I work with them too. They're a mounted unit. And, this is on the 3rd floor of a building. They figured it out, and they're on the 3rd floor of a building in Manhattan. So if they can do it, anybody can do it. I have to impress upon you guys, you don't have time to be looking for halters and lead ropes. When we do these things, we do them for practice, and invariably, the horse is not interested in coming to Darth Vader, who has pulled up to their stall door and breathing like, and the horse is like, peace out, I want to leave. So it really comes down to having a predefined run-out evacuation plan where we don't even have to get our firefighters to be handling horses. When we do it, where they have to handle horses, you start realizing the sea of understanding that they don't understand about horse behavior that can get somebody hurt. And if you compare the times that it takes to lead horses out versus chase them out, it's very, very different. It's so much easier to do if you can open some stall doors, chase them out to a paddock or a pasture, and be done with it, close that gate, and deal with the fire at that point. Practicing those evacuation plans regularly is difficult for anybody, and I understand that, but it is the best way to do it. And of course, I have lots of information and resources how to do it. I'm just going to buzz through this real quick. We did some comparisons. We found that generally it takes less than 2 minutes for just about any size barn if you have a good evacuation plan that's a run-out plan. Here's one that worked. They lost they lost a lot of money. They didn't lose a single horse. They put their horses out because they had an evacuation plan. They practiced the plan. In this case, sadly, the horses got out and ran down the road. And I'm glad they didn't get hurt. They jumped fences. They did all those kinds of things. So it would have been nice if they'd had a secondary fencing on the front of the place. But hey, at least they didn't lose any of the horses in the fire. But it can be done. So huge thanks to my demonstrators and my colleagues. That's Ariel there posing. She always poses. This is Fake Smoke doing a demonstration with firefighters. There are some resources. Again, I will make sure that Steve has these. If you need to get a hold of me, that's my cell and my email. And there is a Facebook TLR study group about large animal rescue. It's not a prayer group, so be very careful before you post something. But I encourage you to take a look at that. And thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for standing in at the last moment. You'll now have to prepare a third backup presentation. So Plan B has just gone into effect. So we'll look forward to seeing what you deliver on for Plan C. Chris Riley's mentioned a fantastic presentation as always, and that his university team needs to see this. So I think that's fantastic. Now, would love to hear questions for Rebecca. And
see one down there, water tank heaters, making them safe. That's a very good question. Water tank heaters are notorious for having those kind of things. And if you do a little bit of Googling on images, you will find pictures of burned water tanks where that has been a problem. A lot of that comes down to having one of those ground fault indicating. I know there are different countries call them different things, but it indicates the fault if there's a short in the system, and those things are purchasable. The problem with horses is they put their feet in them, they knock them, those kind of things. And also, of course, there's also a problem with electrical. Best practice, and remember, I live in South Georgia, so it's not very cold here most of the time. But best practice that I have been told from some of those northern areas where it's really cold is you should warm that water up during the day when you can supervise it, and then shut off that thing at night. And I know a lot of people don't want to do that, but that is considered the best practice. Cindy, okay, Cindy Machado is asking a question on getting veterinary hospitals to have disaster plans for your facilities. Yes, I do actually have a publication that I did with Rebecca McConico about 2-3 years ago for AAP, and I will also send that to Stephen. There's lots of details in that publication. We will get that out to you guys immediately. It really comes down to sitting down with some, like I said, a structural engineer, a firefighter. Bring a firefighter to your veterinary hospital. Have them look around. They have a whole different perspective on safety, life safety, and fire safety. And they will start asking questions, and you will start going, I don't know. And that's where you got to get together and, do I need more fire extinguishers? Do I need extra doors? And I know, again, it's balancing security versus safety, but that you may find some things, particularly on older facilities, that may be very challenging. Okay, Jen, Code 3 Associates, how do we convince barn owners that they will not be shut down if they ask the fire department to come out and review their facilities? That is the best question. Nobody from any fire department anywhere in the world is going to charge you, except maybe New Jersey. No, just teasing. As a firefighter, especially rural volunteer firefighter, if you find that chief in your local fire department, say, hey, I've got this huge facility here. Do you know that I have random people that come here every single day? And I've got little girls that come here and ride horses, and I've got some people have people with challenges that come to therapeutic riding facilities. Do you know that those people are here? And I'd really like for you to come here and help me come up with a plan. They will be all over it. And if they're not, you call me and I will call them and chew their rear ends. Because that's ridiculous. As firefighters, we much prefer to help prevent these problems than we do to have to respond to them. It's a heck of a lot cheaper in time, effort, and money, and also in the mental health thing. So very good question, Jen. We've got to get that word out somehow to the horse owners that they're not going to get charged on those kind of things. Okay, Michelle, thank you for the session. Incredible. Okay, thank you. Does NFPA only cover requirements for Build Back Better codes? If a barn is not currently up to code, are there legislative requirements to fix that within a certain amount of time? Totally depends upon the authority having jurisdiction, which is AHJ in your jurisdiction. For most of them, you're grandfathered, and depends on the country, depends on the state, but a lot of it you're grandfathered simply because that's the way the laws work. But there may be, depending on, like if you've got therapeutic riding or you've got a business, there may be other things for this. The other complication is horses in most places fall into the ag laws. So technically, you don't have to do much of nothing. And that's the problem. We don't, if it gets rated as an ag occupancy versus a human occupancy, then ag occupancy basically, that means that they're counting boxes. So whether you're a chicken or a horse or whatever, you're being counted as a box, and it's some inanimate object or whatever. So that's where NFPA made the change. They said, hey, these are sentient animals. We had that discussion, Steve, about sentience. It's actually in NFPA 150, thank goodness. We had some arguments about that. It's a sentient being, and it deserves to be prevented from having to suffer and the welfare considerations. Okay, Erica, if I had $5,000 to spend on upgrades, what would you suggest that I spend it on? Fans, and get an electrical contractor to your place, and fire extinguishers. Those three things. Fans, the upgraded fans, the UL 507 compliant closed housing fans. They're like $140, most of them. They're not $10 at Walmart. Get an electrical inspection, and then get the good fire extinguishers. A lot of people don't know you're supposed to turn your fire extinguisher upside down about every 6 months and make sure that the chemicals slide in it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, call a firefighter or go to the people that go around businesses. Businesses have to have their fire extinguishers checked on a monthly basis. And there's people who do that for a living, and they sell those kinds of fire extinguishers. Stats on fiberglass skylights. How vulnerable are they to fire and radiant heat? I don't know of any stats. I will tell you that there's been a lot of changes in the fire service over the last 10 years or so, talking about horizontal and vertical ventilation. In other words, do you want ventilation to go up and take the heat out, or do you want to try to close it in? Generally, that doesn't apply to ag buildings because hopefully there's a lot of ventilation in those buildings. Generally, skylights are probably a pretty good idea, or the little strips at the very top of the barns that are supposed to release that extra heat. That's one of the sensors that we often find useful in barns, is the rate of rise thermal sensors, because they can determine, hey, it's 100 degrees outside, but it's getting up to 500 degrees in here, which is not normal. So again, you have to hire somebody professional that does that for a living. The problem with those cheap $10 cheap $10 smoke detectors that people try to put in their barns is A, the batteries don't work. B, they're so sensitive to dust and heat and humidity and those kind of things. They go off about every 5 minutes in Georgia. And so people pull them out and then they're useless. So your point about skylights is I would ask someone who does skylights in your area and ask them if there is any stats on that. On metal ag industrial roofs, yeah. Okay, our isolation barn fires. Oh my goodness. Chris Riley says, our isolation barn fire extinguishers were recently stolen. Even thieves know how important they are. Good for you. Thank you, Julie. So if you guys have any questions, got my contact information there. Don't hesitate. Jen Rosegay will help you. She's one of our awesome admins on the study group, and she will help you also if you got questions. Other than that, I appreciate, Steve, for you guys having me, and thank you very much.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you, Rebecca, and always exciting. So thanks for a great presentation.
And terrifying. Everybody's going to go home and go, now, oh my God, my horses are going in a pasture the rest of their lives. Sorry.
Just what's your thoughts on, in terms of fire safety around those facilities, what's your thoughts on some of the new sort of smart fire alarms which can also connect to your phone? And obviously it relies on Wi-Fi and all those other things, but remote cameras, and also water supplies being available on the property in bulk for fire service. Any thoughts on those?
Okay, so let me answer one question at a time. So the first one is the camera connected Nest and all those kind of things. Absolutely, but you got to make sure that it's legitimate for an outside facility. And technology is improving at all times, but really you need to, instead of just doing some Googling, it's very frustrating. Hire somebody that knows what they're actually doing, that is going to make it for an outdoor occupancy that has horses with dust and the humidity and all those kinds of things. It needs to be specific. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. I love the concept of having, and actually some of the absolutely god-awful fires that I have pictures of and video of is from people who had those kinds of situations. Last year, actually, right around Christmas, there was a situation with a pig farm, and they had a live feed. For whatever reason, they were expecting this pig to farrow, and a watcher realized that on the live feed on the internet that a fire had started in the farrowing area, and this was in a big box stall. This was organic farm, and they called the people that were listed and said, "Hey, do you realize that the place is on fire?" And the people ran out there and they were able to put the fire out. How cool is that? Now, most people I don't think are going to have it on a live feed on the internet. But that does demonstrate that the hive mind managed to save those animals in this case and their entire barn. So that was successful. What was the last question?
Having bulk water supply on the property, often,
yes.
certainly with things like
Okay.
some of the chicken farms I've
Again,
sort of seen
so
going
his
up.
question about bulk water supply. So really that comes down to, can your local fire department even use it? In some places, like in the United States, there have been grant programs in the past where you could get a connection pre-done in your pond or your river that's very close. Fire services can draft from water sources, but they have to be able to get to them. They have to get close to them, and they can't be more than 10 feet below. So that makes it a little bit dicey. You sort of got to plan ahead, which means go call your fire department before you do any of those things. Say, hey, is there anything here that I could be useful? If you had a pond right next to the road that you could just add some gravel to and let them drive through, that'd be awesome. They would love that. In fact, they'd probably get a grant to put that in for you so they could use it for your neighbor down the road too. But again, that really comes down to some serious pre-planning, coordinating with your local fire department. And if you need some expertise on that, yes, just send me an email and I'll get it to you.
Well, I think we'll draw questions there to an end, but always fascinating listening to you, Rebecca. I think everyone could listen and listen for a long time with all your expertise and anecdotes and evidence. That's fantastic.
I'm passionate about saving animals from fire. It's awful, guys. When you start doing some Googling and you start realizing how many fires actually occur, and that doesn't even include the number that die in wildfires, it's awful. So we got to get better.
Absolutely. And thank you for stepping in at the last minute to provide that session. I was
Didn't
actually sort of
have any
hoping
makeup on.
I was hoping that would have a cancellation at some stage in the conference, so I could see the session. So I look forward to seeing what's going to be in your contingency presentation next time.
My next backup plan.
Yeah. Look,
Thank you, Steve.
I think our pleasure, Rebecca. Well, what I thought I'd do is if Yvonne or Gary, I know you're there on the panel. The presentation that we had scheduled was about NASA AEP or NASAP, and I'm just sort of keen to see whether Gary or Yvonne, and if they're not around anymore, maybe sort of coming back to Rebecca, just to explain to people what that program is, where it came from. So I'll just see if we can see if Gary or Yvonne is available or interested.
I'm still on, Steve.
Great, Yvonne. Hang on. I will add you there, so you should be able to talk in video. I may have accidentally clicked mute, but you should be able to turn it back on. Brilliant. There you are.
Okay, we don't need video.
Not
right.
That's fine. Looks like we've got Yvonne and Gary there. So Yvonne, while we've got you there, would you mind just giving people who did tune in today a quick overview of NASEP and the great work you've done?
Oh, sure. So NASEP stands for the National Alliance of State Animal and Agricultural Emergency Programs. And I've been really lucky to be involved with NASEP, gosh, maybe over the last 8 years. I was first introduced to the organization through Dr. Kevin Dennison, who I worked with. A lot of folks on this call probably know Kevin. He was with Animal Care and was helping this group of members, and our voting members are primarily state employees whose responsibility it is to plan for animals in disasters. And so I first got involved with them, oh yeah, more than probably 10 years ago now. We were stuck in a snowstorm in Kansas City because they were working on some best practice working group materials. And that was my first introduction. That material is actually on the Center for Food Security and Public Health of the Iowa State University website. And we're hoping to update that within the next year or so. But there's just some incredible people that are both voting members as well as non-voting members. I'm on the board, thrilled to kind of represent the exotic side of the house, because state folks don't often think about exotic animals. They're, obviously worried primarily a lot about companion animals and livestock. And so what we try to do is every 18 months or so, we try to have a summit, and we've had some great in-person meetings. You were able to be with us in Bellevue in December of 2019, which seems like a decade ago, considering nobody's going anywhere. I think, no, that wasn't quite the last time I was on an airplane, but it was close. This year, we are doing a virtual summit, and that is going to be in April, I believe the 21st to the 23rd or the 22nd through the 24th. I'd have to double check, but it is on our website, thenasep.org, NASAAEP.org, or I'm sorry, .com. Oh, good Lord. So, take a look. We've got the summit coming up. It's a lot of the usual suspects, real movers and shakers that are within the ag industry. Not only do we care a lot about natural disasters, but there's a lot of folks on there that really do a lot of planning for foreign animal diseases. And, obviously that's a huge threat to our ag industry. And so, we welcome you to join us. We've got a little sign in when you go to the website, and we send out zap or little blasts that talk about monthly meetings that we have, or monthly conference calls. And Rebecca's presented. We've had other speakers that are on this conference present as well, and other folks that we reach out to that go over some of the legal issues involving rescue and recovery of animals in disasters. So it's a good group. So that's my elevator pitch.
And look, thanks for that, Yvonne. And I'll put up a link on the GADMAC website. And I wanted to acknowledge the hard work and the effort that you and your colleagues have done with the NASEP. As you mentioned, attending the conference in 2019, that was probably that would be a career highlight for me, to actually be in a room with so many knowledgeable and passionate people that were all there to improve animal disaster management arrangements. And I dare say it provided some inspiration behind GADMAC. So thank you for the hard work that you and the board and your members have done with the NASEP to facilitate such a great exchange of ideas. And hopefully when the borders open up again, we'll all be able to come back together again. But I'd certainly encourage anyone that's interested in these topics to attend the NASEP conference. It's definitely very professionally run, some outstanding speakers, and certainly worth your time. So I'll just quickly check in to see if there's any other sort of further comments. I'll also try to find some information from Rebecca that I can put up on the website regarding barn fire safety as well. But thank you both to Rebecca and Yvonne for giving us some impromptu presentations for this session.
Thanks, Steve.
Our pleasure. Right, well, that looks like it's going to be us for this particular session. Your next session starting in 1 hour and 7 minutes. You've got enough break to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on your time zone. But we'll be back to talk about benefits for an animal-inclusive approach to disaster recovery in the agricultural sector with Dr. Monica Gupta from India. So thanks for joining GADMAC, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Have a good day, morning, or afternoon.